Good day. Welcome to English 9, Making Connections, featuring the text The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry, Quarter 2, Weeks 3 to 4. I am Mr. Nelson Sambalod and I am your subject teacher for this course. Look at that image. You are highly correct. It's a gift. And I do believe that looking at it, it made you recall those days that you received gifts from the people around you, particularly from your loved ones and special someone. It made you felt special. But as what people are saying, it's not the amount of the gift that counts, but it's always the thought. It's the thought that counts and not the amount of the gift. Let us find out how is that thought related to the text that we are about to read, which is The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. At this point, I would like you to read the story The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. See the copy of the story in the module, read it for better understanding. And for quick comprehension of the text, watch the animated video of the story which I already shared in our Google Classroom. I also have here the link of the said animated video. The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. William Sidney Porter, also known as O. Henry, was born on September 11, 1862, in Greensboro, North Carolina, USA. He was an American writer known for writing short stories about the lives of ordinary people. He died on June 5, 1910, in New York, New York. $1.87. That was all, and 60 cents of it was in pennies. Pennies saved 1 and 2 at a time by bulldozing the grocer and the vegetable man and the butcher until one's cheeks burned with the silent imputation of parsimony that such close dealing implied. 3 times Tala counted it, $1.87, and the next day would be Christmas. There was clearly nothing to do but plop down on the shabby little couch at home, so Della did it, which instigates the moral reflection that life is made up of sobs, sniffles, and smiles, with sniffles predominating, while the mistress of the home is gradually subsiding from the first stage to the second. Take a look at the home, a furnished flat at $8 per week. It did not exactly provide a beggar description, but it certainly had a word on the lookout for the mendicancy squad. In the vestibule below was a letter box into which no letter would go, and an electric button from which no mortal finger could coax a ring. Also, appertaining thereunto was a card bearing the name Mr. James Dillingham Young. The Dillingham had been belonged to the breeze during a former period of prosperity when its possessor was being paid $30 per week. Now, when the income was shrunk to $20, though they were thinking seriously of contracting to a modest and unassuming but whenever Mr. James Dillingham Young came home and reached his flat above, he was called Jim, and greatly hugged by Mrs. James Dillingham Young, already introduced to you as Della, which is all very good. Della finished her cry and attended to her cheeks with a powder rag. She stood by the window and looked out dully at a gray cat walking a gray fence in a gray backyard. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and she had only $1.87 with which to buy Jim a present. She had been saving every penny she could for months. With this result, $20 a week doesn't go far. Expenses had been greater than she could calculated. They always are. Only $1.87 to buy a present for Jim, her Jim. Many a happy hour she had spent planning for something nice for him, something fine and rare and sterling, something just a little bit near to being worthy of the honor of being owned by Jim. There was a pier glass between the windows of the room. Perhaps you have seen a pier glass in an $8 flat. A very thin and very agile person may, by observing his reflection in the rapid sequence of longitudinal strips, obtain a fairly accurate conception of his looks. Della, being slender, had mastered the art. Suddenly she whirled from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its color within 20 seconds, rapidly. She pulled down her hair and let it fall to its full length. Now, there were two possessions of the James Dillingham Youngs in which they both took a mighty pride. One was Jim's gold watch that had been his father's and his grandfather's. The other was Della's hair. Had the Queen of Sheba lived in the flat across the air shop, Della would have let her hair hang out the window some day, to dry just to depreciate Her Majesty's jewels and gifts. Had King Solomon been the janitor with all his treasures piled up in the basement, Jim would have pulled out his watch every time he passed just to see him pluck at his beard from envy. So now Dalla's beautiful hair fell about her, rippling and shining like a cascade of brown waters. It reached below her knee and made itself almost a garment for her. And then she did it up again nervously and quickly. Once she faltered for a minute, stood still while a tear or two splashed on the worn red carpet. On went her old brown jacket, on went her old brown hat, with a whirl of skirts and with a brilliant sparkle still in her eyes. She fluttered out the door and down the stairs to the street, where she stopped. The sign read Amini Soprani. Her hair goods of all kinds, one flight up, Della ran and collected herself, panting. Madame, large, too white, chilly, hardly looked the Soprani. Will you buy my hair? Asked Della. I buy hair, said Madame. Take your hat off and let's have a sight at that looks of it. Down rippled the brown cascade. $20, said Madame, lifting the mass with a practised hand. Give it to me quick, said Della. Oh, and the next 2 hours tripped by on rosy wings. Forget the hashed metaphor. She was ransacking the stores for Jim's present. She found it at last. It surely had been made for Jim and no one else. There was no other like it in any of the stores, and she had turned all of them inside out. It was a platinum fob chain, simple and chaste in design, properly proclaiming its value by substance alone and not by meretricious ornamentation. As all good things should do, it was even worthy of the watch. As soon as she saw it, she knew that it must be Jim's. It was like him, quietness and value. The description applied to both. $21 they took from her for it, and she hurried home with the 87 cents. With that chain on his watch, James might be properly anxious about the time in any company. Grand as the watch was, he sometimes looked at it on the sly on account of the old leather strap that he used in place of a chain. When Della reached home, her intoxication gave way a little to prudence and reason. She got out her curling irons and lighted the gas and went to work repairing the ravages made by generosity added to love, which is always a tremendous task, dear friends, a mammoth task. Within 40 minutes her head was covered with tiny close-lying curls that made her look wonderfully like a truant schoolboy. She looked at her reflection in the mirror long, carefully and critically. If Jim doesn't kill me, she said to herself, before he takes a second look at me, he'll say I look like a Coney Island chorus girl. But what could I do? Oh, what could I do with $1.87? At 7 o'clock the coffee was made and the frying pan was on the back of the stove hot and ready to cook the chops. Jim was never late. Della doubled the fob chain in her hand and sat on the corner of the table near the door that he always entered. Then she heard his steps on the stairway down on the first flight, and she turned white for just a moment. She had a habit for saying little silent prayer about the simplest everyday things, and now she whispered, "Please, God, make him think I am still pretty." The door opened, and Jim stepped in and closed it. He looked thin and very serious. Poor fellow, he was only 22 and to be burdened with a family. He needed a new overcoat and he was without gloves. Jim stopped inside the door, as immovable as a setter at the scent of a quail. His eyes were fixed upon Della, and there was an expression in them that she could not read, and it terrified her. It was not anger, nor surprise, nor disapproval, nor horror, nor any of the sentiments that she had been prepared for. He simply stared at her fixedly with that peculiar expression on his face. Della wriggled off the table and went for him. Jim, darling, she cried, don't look at me that way. I had my hair cut off and sold because I couldn't have lived through Christmas without giving you a present. It will grow out again. You won't mind, will you? I just had to do it. My hair grows awfully fast. Say, Merry Christmas, Jim, and let's be happy. You don't know what a beautiful, nice gift I got for you. You've cut off your hair? Asked Jim laboriously, as if he had not arrived at the patent fact yet, even after the hardest mental labor. Cut it off and sold it, said Della. Don't you like me just as well, anyhow? I'm me without my hair, ain't I? Jim looked about the room curiously. You say your hair is gone? He said, with an air almost of idiocy. You didn't look for it, said Della. It's sold, I tell you, sold and gone, too. It's Christmas Eve, boy. Be good to me, for it went for you. Maybe the hairs of my head were numbered, she went on with sudden serious sweetness, but nobody could ever count my love for you. Shall I put the chops on, Jim? Out of his trance, Jim seemed quickly to wake. He unfolded his dollar. For 10 seconds, let us regard with discreet scrutiny some inconsequential object in the other direction. $8 a week or $1 million a year, what is the difference? A mathematician or a wit would give you the wrong answer. The Magi brought valuable gifts, but that was among them. This dark assertion will be eliminated later on. Jim drew a package from his overcoat pocket and threw it upon the table. Don't make any mistake, Dal, he said. About me, I don't think thirst. Anything in the way of a haircut or a shave or a shampoo that could make me like my girl any less. But if you will unwrap that package, you may see why you had me going a while at first. White fingers and nimble tore at the string and paper, and then an ecstatic scream of joy, and then, alas, a quick feminine change to hysterical tears and wails, necessitating the immediate employment of all the comforting powers of the Lord of the Flat. For there lay the combs, the set of combs side and back that Della had worshipped long in a Broadway window. Beautiful combs, pure tortoise shell with jeweled rims, just the shade to wear in the beautiful banished hair. They were expensive combs, she knew, and her heart had simply craved and yearned over them without the least hope of possession. And now they were hers, but the tresses that should have adorned the coveted adornments were gone. But she hugged them to her bosom, and at length she was able to look up with dim eyes and a smile and say, My hair grows so fast, Jim. And then Della leaped up like a little sink cat and cried, Oh, oh. Jim had not yet seen his beautiful present. She held it out to him eagerly upon her open palm. The dull precious metal seemed to flash with a reflection of her bright and ardent spirit. Isn't it a dandy, Jim? I hunted all over town to find it. You will have to look at the time 100 times a day now. Give me your watch. I want to see how it looks on it. Instead of obeying, Jim tumbled down on the couch and put his hands under the back of his head and smiled. Dell, said he, let's put our Christmas presents away and keep them a while. They're too nice to use just at present. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs. And now suppose you put the chaps on. The Magi, as you know, were wise men, wonderfully wise men, who brought gifts to the baby in the manger. They invented the art of giving Christmas presents. Being wise, their gifts were two doubt wise ones, possibly bearing the privilege of exchange in case of duplication. And here I have lamely related to you the uneventful chronicle of two foolish children in a flat who most unwisely sacrificed for each other the greatest treasures of their house. But in a last word to the wise of these days, let it be said that all of who gave gifts these two were the wisest. Oh, all who give and receive gifts, such as they are wisest, everywhere they are wisest. They are the Magi. I do believe that you had a great time watching the animated video of The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. Now let's find out if you really understood the animated video or the story that you read in your modules. Let's answer the following questions. Number one, who are the characters in the story? Of course, we have the lovers. Della and Jim or James, and also the one who bought the hair of Della. Then number two, why did the characters sell their most valuable items? They sold their most valuable items for them to have money on purchasing gifts for each other. Next, what are magi? Relate your answer to the characteristics of Jim and Della. Magi are the three wise men in the story of the three wise men who gave gifts to Jesus Christ, to baby Jesus Christ. Now, how can we relate the three wise men's characteristics to the characteristics of Jim and Dalla? We can say that Jim and Dalla are like the three wise men or the Magi's because they really thought hard on what gifts they will give to each other, just like the Magi's. Next, how will you relate the story to your personal experiences? Well, I can relate the story to my personal experiences in the sense that there were times in my life that I really thought hard on what presents I would be giving to my loved ones, to the people who are dear to me. And also, I even made sacrifices just to buy those gifts for them, just like Jim and Della. Now, the next question, how will you relate this story to the account of the three magi in the story of the birth of Jesus? Well, just like the three magi, as I said earlier, Dala and Jim thought hard on what gifts they will give to each other, and they even sacrificed their said to be most valuable possession in their home just to purchase the gifts for each other. And just like the magi, they thought very hard on what gifts they will give to baby Jesus Christ. Then the last question, does this world need more magi? Yes, this world needs more magi in the sense that we should not always think of our own happiness, but let's think of ways on how can we make people around us happy. Okay? Then explain what life lesson can be learned from the given story. The best lesson, one of the best lessons that can be derived from the story is that let's always appreciate gifts that we receive from the people around us. For just like what I've said at the beginning of the lecture, it's not the price of the gift that matters, but it's the thought that counts. Okay, just like how Jim and Della ended up giving gifts to each other, but of course you also have the portion in the story that they said to one another that their love for each other is more important than any gift that they can receive, that they will receive. Okay, so I think that's one of the life lessons that we can derive from the given story. And of course, I would like to read yours as you answer, as you provide your very own answers for the following question. So check your Google Classroom, look for the Google Form link, and provide your answers for the following questions. Though I provided mine, I don't want to read the same answer. So you should be providing your very own, okay? Of course, aside from those questions that the answers are really coming from the text. Okay, let's continue. Let's now have Learning Task 5. Using the selection in Learning Task 4, accomplish the Notice, Wonder, Connect Organizer. So do this in the Google Form link. But for you to have idea on how to do it, I would like you to focus and listen intently to my explanation on how are you going to accomplish the table that you can see on your screen. So you have there the Gift of the Maggie by O. Henry. Then you have there three columns. First column, what I noticed while reading. So you may focus on the following unfamiliar words, characters and their characteristics, plot, etc. So what I would like you to write in the first column, you pick there five unfamiliar words coming from the text, just like the example there, vestibule. Okay? So five unfamiliar words. Next, you pick out there the names of the characters in the story. After picking out the names of the characters in the story, I would like you to provide at least a characterization or a characteristic of each character. Okay? And
lastly, you provided the five essential elements of a plot. So we already studied what are the five essential elements of a plot. I would like you to include them in the first column. Okay, so what did you notice while reading the text, or you try to notice those as you read the text? Okay, next, what I wonder about while reading. So what I wonder about while reading, you may focus on the following: meaning of unfamiliar words, behavior of the characters, plot, etc. So as you read the text, maybe you encountered their difficult words, and as you encountered them, you underline, you highlight those difficult words, and you kept on thinking, what do those words mean? So now, as you pick out five unfamiliar words under column 1 or in column 1, now in column 2, you will write the definitions of those five unfamiliar words. Okay? Then, you provide a statement coming from the text that will justify your characterization or the characteristic that you wrote about that character in the text. Okay? Like, for example, suddenly she whirled from the window and stood before the glass. Her eyes were shining brilliantly, but her face had lost its color within 20 seconds. So that is a statement, or that is a line coming from the text that will justify if my characterization to the female character would be bewildered, or a girl who easily, a female or a girl that easily becomes bewildered. Okay? So that will be my attestation or justification to my characterization to the character that I picked, okay? Whom I associated that characteristic, okay? Then I would like you to provide there one question. So just one question that kept on popping in your mind as you read the text, okay? So it made you wonder while reading the text. So just a question, okay? Provide a question in column 2. Then in the last column, how I connect to the text. You may focus on your personal experiences on the idea of giving. So I have here a quote said by Ralph Waldo Emerson, the greatest gift is a portion of thyself. So why did I choose that quote of Ralph Waldo Emerson? Because just like in the story, they really sacrifice, the characters sacrifice something that can be considered already a part of them. Okay, so I would like you to provide at least three, okay, or three. Let us not make it at least. Make it three. Okay? So provide three answers for column three. So I hope this activity is clear. So let us continue. Again, do watch this portion. Listen to me intently, for I already gave here the instructions on how are you going to accomplish this in your Google Classroom, Google Form link. So let's continue. As you notice, this activity, learning task 5, is a good practice of your skill or what you have learned on making annotations or annotating. So in the previous activity that I gave you, I asked you to make annotation of an excerpt coming from the gift of the Magi. Now this one is also a way of practicing your skill on making annotations or annotating. It just so happened that here we have a table and you're completing it with information coming from the text. But actually, without the table and just having there the handouts of the text, then as you keep on highlighting, writing, noting, writing there your questions, encircling their vocabulary words, having their question marks, exclamation points, and other symbols that you will use for you to better understand the text. Then, as you do that, that's the skill that you have learned on making connections, particularly making annotations or annotating. So congratulations, for I do believe that by now you have learned already how to make annotations. Let's proceed to Learning Task 6. Make connections with the text you read in Learning Task 4 by answering the reflection using big questions form. Check your Google Classroom. So we have this table, The Gift of the Magi by O. Henry. So what pictures or elements of the story surprised me? So the story has the five essential elements of a plot. But what elements of the story surprised me? I have here the tone and mood. So I didn't expect that the tone and mood of the story would be uplifting, inspiring, and warm. So how did they surprise me? They surprised me in the sense that I I thought that the characters or the male character particularly would be reacting violently, but he was so relaxed, he was so calm. Okay, then what did the author think I already knew? The author thought that I knew that in the story, since there's a situation like that, then the character would be reacting violently. But it was not like that. So what do I need to do to address my confusion? Of course, for me to address my confusion dealing with a story, I have to read it from the beginning till the end, and I have to be particular with the details, ideas presented in the text itself. Then what challenge, change, or confirmed my thinking? So what challenge or change my thinking about the story, the flow of the story, is through reading it all from the beginning till end, and of course again, being particular on the details being presented in the text. So how has this impacted my thinking? It impacted my thinking in the aspect that I I realized that a story, or even in real life situation, there are circumstances that we do not need to react negatively or violently, but instead let us just be calm, let us just be relaxed and positive, and things and realizing that things can be talked about, can be resolved in really a peaceful way and not in a violent way. Okay, so that would be all for this activity, and of course I do believe that you can also provide your very own answers for this, dealing with big questions form. So let's proceed. Thank you for listening. I hope that you have learned a lot in our session. Good day and God bless.